welcome back. And as you guys can see, the single cab is back for another video. And this time it's going that way towards Mars. So what we will go over really quick though is we went ahead and did some fuel economy upgrades because it got like terrible fuel mileage before. So all the stuff that restricts the fuel mileage is now no longer underneath the engine bay. We also went ahead, got that big thing underneath of the truck gone, and now it's like 400 pounds lighter. And it sounds like a dump truck or like a Peterbilt semi. And it has this massive exhaust tip now. And believe it or not, we got an exhaust that clears the fuel tank on the cabin chassis. So it's an actual cabin chassis exhaust. So we're gonna head back to the house. I'm gonna drag all the parts out that I have for this truck that I've been sitting for like 2 weeks now and see what we can get done on it really quick. All right, so what we got out now is a 3-inch leveling kit, the blocks for the rear, steering box brace, the drop pitman arm, which is very beefy, 2 sets of U-bolts. I don't know which one we're gonna use. I think one is a different axle diameter than the other. We have all the hardware for that, 2-inch spacers for the front and rear, the 5-inch coil springs, an adjustable track bar, which is actually pretty sweet. Never used this one before, so we'll let you guys know how that works. The pin hard bar drop, control arm drops, control arm extender dealios, all the hardware for the lift itself. These are sway bar drops. If you guys look inside of here, we have a sump for it, an Airdog fuel system for it, and here are the shocks. And I also have mini cradles and coilover conversion brackets that we might test fit now to see how it'll work if we ever want to do coilovers inside the future. Go ahead, get this thing finished up. We already started pulling some stuff off of it. We already have the control arms loose, shocks are loose. We're working on getting the pitman arm and the steering tie rod off, and then dropping the track bar. We'll be able to lower down the axle. So let's get this thing lifted. Well, today is a new day, and as you guys can see behind me, last night we got really busy on the single cab. We went ahead and got the whole front lift done. All the control arm drops are on at the frame, at the axle, coil springs are on, along with our 2.5-inch leveling kit, I believe that is. I thought it was a 3-inch, but it definitely looks a little bit smaller than 3-inch. Track bar drop is installed with the extended track bar. New pitman arm is on. We're gonna have to replace that tie rod end eventually, but I believe we are going to do a crossover steering setup on this. If you guys look right here, the gearbox brace is on with the bearing onto the gearbox. Sway bar drops are on, sway bar's hooked back up, shocks are installed. And this thing honestly sits very big for being on stock wheels. What we're gonna do next is get the rock lights installed inside the wheel liners. I have to wait to do the rear of the truck because I noticed that it has a massive U-bolt right there. We will have to get custom U-bolts made for that, but we have rock lights to install. And we also have an Airdog to get mounted up and install. And then we gotta figure out how we're going to mount the Airdog sump onto the cabin chassis tank. All right, so we got 26 of these Infinite Custom rock lights that we're gonna scatter all over the single cab. We already got the front wheel liners pulled out. We're gonna mount, I think, 1, 2, then 3 in each wheel well. So there'll be a total of 12 around the wheels. And we're gonna do 2 underneath the cab here, 2 under the front bumper. And then we're gonna put 1 in the corner of the bed here. Obviously 3 inside this wheel well, 1 in the corner of the bed here. And then that should give us about 2 or 4 left over. And we will just scatter those out somewhere. We got plugs to be able to plug the bed, plug the cab, and plug each fender liner. So if we ever got to pull a fender liner out, it just unplugs. Then we don't have to cut the actual wire for the rock light and then resplice it together. So that's very convenient that we got these. But let's get some of these rock lights on and hopefully get it all lit up by the end of the night. Wow. 3 rock lights in this wheel well. There's 2 underneath the front bumper here. Obviously 3 inside the other wheel well. 2 underneath the cab. 1 on the corner of the bed right here, 1 on the box right there, 2 up inside that wheel well, 1 at the back of the bed, 1 in the center, and then obviously this side, just like the other side, 2 there, 1 here, 1 there, and 1 on the corner. We're working on getting them all wired up right now. We went out and got this nice coated wire from Infinite Customs that is nice and sealed. Put plugs on the end to where we can unplug the bed from the cab, unplug the wheel wells from the body. So if we ever got to pull the bed off, pull the cab off, everything unplugs to where we got to cut no wires. and buying those plugs I showed you guys earlier was definitely worth it. So while he's wiring up the rock lights, I'm gonna go ahead, get the fuel system installed, get all the hoses ran, and get that sump mounted to that cabin chassis tank. So let's move over to installing the Airdog. This is the Airdog 5G, 165 gallons per hour. We got the wiring kit for it, the fuel hose for it. This would be if we were gonna pull the fuel from the top of the tank, but we have a sump that we will be using on this truck. All the fittings, the brackets, they send these brackets with, which clamp to the frame to hold the mount for the truck. But what I like to do is take this off and drill 4 holes through the frame, as you guys can see, to where this thing just goes right through, slide it through the frame, and then you bolt the whole entire bracket right to the frame. Just a personal preference, looks a lot better in my opinion. But let's get that bracket installed onto the frame, get this mounted, and run these hoses. Then we also got to get underneath here and figure out how we're mounting the sump onto this tank, because it is a cabin chassis and there's like a very big skid plate on the bottom of the tank, which also holds the tank up. So as you guys can see, we got the bracket installed, drilled the holes through to the inside of the frame, mounted the hardware right there, bolted it down, and now we're ready to smack the actual fuel system into this bracket real quick. And then just like that, our Airdog is mounted into the side of the frame. And that thing looks literally sick. So I know that some people are into seeing like the fuel filters hang down. And with this thing having a flatbed on it, you really can't see them hanging down from the side. Maybe once we get the rear lift on, you will be able to a little bit. But where you can see it is right through that little crack between the bed and the cab itself. Come down here, you guys can see we had to cut a little hole out of the fuel tank holder to be able to mount the sump, and the fuel is now draining into the bucket. It's almost all out of there. And just like that, the hole that we cut inside the skid plate for the fuel tank was perfect to mount the sump. I went ahead and ran both of the Airdog hoses up through there, through the frame, and it comes back around out of the hole right there. You kind of see it to the Airdog. All we have to do now is run the line from the Airdog itself up to the CP3 pump on the engine. Take this harness right here, run that up. That hooks up to the battery. And then this plug back here just kind of tees off the factory harness, which is on top of the sending unit on the fuel tank. Once that's all hooked up, we'll be able to start the truck up again. Last night, Ashton went ahead and got all the rock lights all hooked up, wired up. Here's the power and ground for it. We got to extend that wire, run it up into a switch, but they're all mounted underneath the rockers and the bed and stuff how they should be. We're currently working on getting the lift blocks installed on the axle. Use the trans jack to hold the axle up, and I put these little straps on the side just so, you know, if it drops, it's not dropping 10 feet and shattering the axle or damaging the axle. So if it drops, hopefully that will hold it. But we got to get that bolt off, be able to drop that down, then we'll just lower down the trans jack a little bit, slap the blocks inside there, and we should be good to go. Wow, that's a fancy, massive 3/4 U-bolt.
It's about 3 feet long.
Literally.
Because there's 30 leaf springs on this.
Yeah, my mega cab only has like 1, 2, 3, 4, I think. So this has 5 more than mine has. I don't have overloads either, so probably should slap those on my truck since you have them, and I can't have you having leaf spring overloads and me not. So we got the blocks on the rear. That side is already snugged up. Working on getting this side on. And we'll be able to take the trans jack down. Gonna have to pull the sway bar off for now because we don't have long enough sway bar links for it. Just like that, the rear lift kit's installed. We got the blocks in, shocks on. The U-bolts that we had custom made are now installed as well. And wheels and tires are back on the rear. The Airdog hoses are ran to the front. Rock lights are all done, installed, hooked up. All we have to do now is lower the truck down, get the fuel system wiring hooked up, get the rock light wiring hooked up, and then hook up the Airdog hose to the CP3 pump with this little fancy fitting. So let's get the truck lowered down and get that stuff hooked up. We should be able to back this truck out of here tonight. And just like that, it's back on its own weight. And the rear is lifted. It's no longer squatting how it used to before. Airdog hose here. These are the lights. We gotta get hooked up to a switch. Just hooked up the fuel system wiring. And we are working on getting the CP3 deal right there, tightened up, plug the hose in, and we should be ready to start the truck. Just like that, we have the rock light wire hooked up, the Airdog wire hooked up, ran into the cab to a switch. The Airdog is also hooked up to the CP3. That's all done. So you know what time that is to start the truck and back it out. We got 26 infinite custom rock lights on this thing, and it is bright. We got the rough country lift kit all installed. It's at a 7-inch in the front, 5-inch in the rear. We also got the fuel system all finished up. Come around to the back. Got the exhaust from SPE installed in the truck. That thing sounds amazing. Drop a comment what you guys think we should do for wheel size and tire size. I'm thinking like a 28 on a 37. But I don't know how that would do towing. So, like I said, drop a comment. Let us know what you guys think on that. And with that being said, that's the end of today's video. Hope you guys liked it. And we should be back pretty soon with the wheel and tire video. I don't know. Maybe we'll just run these ones through the winter. But knowing me, it will probably have wheels and tires on it very, very soon.